see. That's off, that's off, that's off, that's on. That seems to be working. Let's do it. Hello, Shadowcat back again. Back with more Babylon 5 because I love it, because I'm having fun, and if you want to have fun, well, I can't guarantee that. But I'm having fun, so let's hope that it's infectious enough that you'll have fun too. We're still building ships. We have a lot more ships to build, but this will be the last day that we're working on human ships. After that, we're going to be working on the other races' ships, and they're going to go relatively quick because we don't see much of them. The Earth Alliance had, if you count their small craft, a whole 6, 8, something like that. The rest of them usually have like maybe 1 or 2 big ships and a small craft. So we might be able to knock out one of the races every day. And when it comes to the non-aligned worlds, since most of them don't have stats anyway, then there's not a whole lot we can do for those. But we will do our best, of course. So, without further ado, we're going to get into it. But before we do that, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. Once you do that, hit the bell icon. It does actually do things. I don't know if it actually matters, but it does do things. If you know somebody else who's also into either Babylon 5 or Starfinder in general, then go ahead and share this video with them. If you want to leave a like on the video because you like what I'm doing here, go ahead and do that too. You can also leave comments. It's down there. But if you're going to go ahead and leave comments, might I suggest, go ahead and join the Discord. I'm always looking for new players. Join the Discord, go to the Behind the Screens channel. Let me know what games that you want to play, either games that I've already done, or, you can suggest new ones too. Let me know what you want to play, let me know what your availability is, and once I have enough people for a game, we'll play. So, I look forward to seeing you there, and for now, let's just go ahead and get into this. Make sure that my chat window's over here. That way, if somebody comes in, I can actually see them come in, because as it turns out, I don't have chameleon eyes. I don't even have 2 eyes. I have 1 eye. It has to do everything. Believe me, it's unhappy. So, let me go ahead and bring in our browser. We're going to need that. We'll bring in the spreadsheet so we can get everything written down. We'll go over what we did last time real quick, because last time was good. Last time I got to build my favorite ships. So when we were here, we worked on the Nova and the Omega classes. Now both of them are basically the same ship, just outfitted in different ways. The big difference isn't actually in the numbers. The big difference is in the operation of them. I did add something real quick to the bottom here in the notes, and that is, one of the things that I left out is that none of these ships have gravity on them. In Starfinder, it's generally assumed that all ships have gravity. It's not explained, it just is. And it's usually a big deal if you end up in 0G. So, I had to put notes in here. These Star Furies, they don't have any kind of gravity, they cannot land on planets, they cannot do anything. Okay, so they have none of that. The Warlock class. Now, this one was actually kind of interesting. So the Warlock class, or not the Warlock, the Olympus class is interesting. When we made it, we determined that it was going to be half the size of the Hyperion, and that made it a large destroyer, which turned out to work really well. It is a tier 5 ship to a tier 10 ship, it is a large to a huge, etc. Interestingly, because of the rules in the book, according to Starfinder, any ship that is large or smaller is capable of landing on a ship. Or not capable of landing on a ship, capable of landing on a planet. And so I thought about that and I said, should the Olympus class be able to land on planets? Technically speaking, according to the lore, the answer is no. But I really thought about it and I said, how do we want to define landing on that one too? If you were to try and land a larger ship, the rules simply tell you that you're not allowed to. I have to reinterpret that and say that it would be suicide to try. So perhaps if we're going to look at the Olympus class, we can simply say that it may never get off the planet again, but it could land on the planet survivably. At any rate, I went ahead and I left it so that it could actually land on a planet. And my chat's not updating properly, but JP is in the chat. Hello, JP. It's good to see you. Oh, there it is. And, there, it finally updated. JP says, why would an Olympus need to land? Well, that's actually the thing. It doesn't. And in canon, it wouldn't. The most I can think of is if it were caught in a gravity well and it were shot down, then maybe it could land without killing everybody. But you're right about that one. In canon, they would never actually land. They're not built to land. So, I made sure to put that in. And of course, they have no gravity. The same thing is true for all the other ships. The Nova class has no gravity, the Omega class has no gravity, neither one of them can land on a planet, neither can the Hyperion. But now we're going to get into the Warlock class. And the Warlock class is going to be different because this ship is the first one to actually have gravity of its own. So, we'll do a quick little recap on that. Oh, and like I said, I was recapping the Nova and the Omega before I went off on that tangent, but they're both carriers. Like I said, I could go on for hours and hours and hours about them because they are my favorite ship, but we adapted them as well as we could. They both have just so very many weapons. And so, we did the best we could. They both have heavy lasers. I do think that I updated one of them. No, I did not. We have particle beams, we have nukes, we have other lasers. Either way, they're looking really good. I really like the way they look. So, we're going to go ahead and we're going to get into the Warlock now. And we'll do that by quickly going through and taking a look at the Warlock here. So, Earth Alliance's latest warship is a byproduct of the Earth Civil War, and by far the most infamous war machine in the Earth Force Navy. The Warlock-class heavy destroyer. Again, they use these words strangely. Well, actually, no, it's not strangely. They named them according to their purpose. Not necessarily, how big they are or what they're doing. They're named for their purpose. So if they had a ship that was large enough that could still chase things down and kill them, yeah, okay, it's a destroyer. I'll give you that. They could even make something that big and call it a frigate, I suppose. It'd be a little awkward, but sure. They were purposely designed to have artificial gravity systems and never designed to use rotating sections. Using technology gained from the Dilgar and technical information stolen from the Centauri Earth Force R&D was positive they could create functional gravitic drive systems, and this is the first one with a gravity drive. That just means that there's no big rockets coming out the end. Now, as far as the actual dimensions of the ship and everything else go, this thing is enormous. It is 2 kilometers long. That's big. Crew of 1,200 with enough room for 80,000 actual troops. It has 3 full wings of Star Furies plus a few extra. It has 6 nuclear reactors. 4 standard and 2 advanced, and I have no idea what exactly that means. I really don't. Like, what is a fusion reactor? What is an advanced fusion reactor? I don't know. We're going to make it work as best we can, though. So we're going to have 12 of the missiles, or 12 large missiles, and this is where we got really interesting because we have 12 large missile slots, 16 small missiles. Okay? Well, that on its own is more room than I have on the ship. So even if we have 4 weapons forward, 4 port, 4 starboard, 4 aft, and 4 turrets, that is 20 weapon slots. Just looking at the missiles, this thing is beyond anything that I can build. But I had an idea. And that is that we're simply going to abstract these things. So, are we going to build this thing to the spec that it is in? Not exactly. But we can make it look like it. See, there's a very interesting way, and that is that we can look at weapons in multiple different fashions. Okay? When we look at a weapon here, and we can say that I have a heavy laser here. Okay? Heavy laser right here. It has long range, and it does 2d4 times 10 damage. Well, a laser is a single attack. It is a single beam that's going to hit and burn. And JP says the next ship would have to be the Gargantua class. I mean, kinda, sorta, actually. Jeffrey's in here. Hello, Jeffrey. It's good to see you. Don't see you very often. Anyway, so the heavy laser hits once. However, when we look at the other weapons, like say the heavy pulse cannon right under it, short 5d6, and it's a point defense weapon. Well, what is it called? What's it called? Now I can't remember. The anti-air gun on the ships. It's got a cute name. I love the cute name, and now I can't remember it. Nope, I can't remember it. Anyway, that weapon on the ships is basically just a massive drum of ammo and sensors sitting on top of a rotary cannon. And that rotary cannon fires, I don't know, somewhere between 2 and 2 billion rounds per second. I haven't exactly done the math. All I know is that thing dumps ammo. And so when you look at the damage output of that, you're going to roll the dice on it, and you're going to do your damage, but... Oh, and JP says the anti-aircraft artillery? No, not that one. It's literally the... Yes, Sea-Whiz! That's it, Sea-Whiz. I couldn't remember. Like I said, the name is adorable. But they dump ammunition at an absolutely ludicrous speed. And if you were to look at the damage output of the Sea-Whiz, does it do, like, 5d6 damage if one bullet hits it, or does it do 5d6 damage because 5d6 bullets hit it? And so we're able to abstract these things in multiple ways. When we looked at the Warlock class has over 20 missile batteries. I cannot put 20 missile batteries on this ship. What I can do, however, is I can say that it has nuclear missiles. Now, the heavy nuclear missile, which, is just the thermonuclear missile down here, does 10d8 damage. So we can look at this and say that a single nuclear missile did 10d8 damage. Okay, that's fine. That's great. I love it. Or what if we looked at it as a salvo? And we said that instead of launching a whole bunch, or instead of launching one really big nuke, what if we launch a bunch of faster, smaller nukes? Well, that means that we would be able to abstract the number of missiles on the Warlock class for this. So we have on here, because this thing is a destroyer, I did not put anything aft. So we have 3, facings on here that are filled. We have 3 railguns, 3 particle beams, 3 plasma cannons, 3 nuclear launchers. That's fine. So we have 3 missile launchers, and I'm assuming that they're nukes, since they were nukes on everything else. But according to this, we have 12 plus 16 is 28 missiles. 28 doesn't divide neatly by 3, but 27 does. And so we could assume that every single time we let one of these things off the chain, we're firing a salvo of 9 missiles, which is not unheard of. If you're going to fire off 1 missile, you generally fire off a bunch. So I think this is going to work for us, this abstraction. And if we did that, I mean, I could say that it does... Well, if it does 10d8 damage, that means that pretty much every missile that hits is doing 1d8, give or take. Or since it's 9 missiles, I guess it'd be doing like 1d7. The point is that we can abstract it to have multiple shots. And that's how we're going to do this. So, I mean, right out the gate, I think we're just going to do this. I'm going to go ahead and copy this over to these. And I'll have to go back and pick up, you know... Well, actually, no, it's written over here. 10 and 14. So 10 and 14 for that. There we go. Now, the railgun. I already wrote down here that the railgun is going to be a mass driver. So let's go to the starships page and we'll work on getting that done, because we already did a lot of work on here before. It's going to be bigger than the Omega because it is physically bigger, so that makes it a dreadnought, which, by the way, JP, you were talking about how the Victory needs to be a Gargantua class. There is technically a size bigger than this. Technically. In the core of Starfinder, Dreadnoughts were the absolute largest ship, but in one of the supplementary materials, we got super colossal ships, and one of those is the Ultranaut. So that's what we'll be using for the Victory class. There is nothing bigger than that unless I were to actually design it myself. Fortunately, I don't think that I have to. I think that everything is going to be just pretty well done there. Okay, anyway, mass driver, need one. And that's going to be a capital weapon. So, capital weapons, mass driver. Here we go. So, direct fire, long, 2d6 times 10. And JP says, the chat has stopped updating on the screen. Yes, it has. And that is not my fault. That is the fault of YouTube Studio. I don't know why. But I can see the chat because I'm watching on a different screen. Yes, I am watching my own stream because Studio is unreliable. And now it updates. See, it does it whenever it feels like it. I actually get a preview of my stream, though, on here, and the preview is completely screwed up. Like, it does not show the same thing. So I can watch an OBS on my left screen and see exactly what I'm piping in. I can look on my right screen and see the actual stream as it's being broadcast, and I can look at YouTube Studio, which is completely worthless. It's hilarious. It's complete garbage. Alright, getting back to the mass driver, though. So it is long and 2d6. And that is it. There is nothing special to the mass driver. It doesn't have any kind of special effects. It is just throwing something heavy at you. It is, however, 25 PCU and 30 build points, which, to give you an idea, means that these are going to be very expensive since we have 3 of them. And my players actually got a bit of a scare in the last B team episode, or at least the last B team session, because they finally came up against a ship that actually had heavy weapons, to say nothing of capital weapons. So that was an interesting little experience. And JP says, so the CWIS is a boring weapon, should have additional damages for internals. Okay, I'm actually kind of glad you brought that up, because that's actually a really interesting question to answer. So, when we come up here and we look at all of our stats, we have the stats for the size and the frame, maneuverability, all this stuff. We have armor and armor classes and all this stuff. We have 2 things, though. We have a damage threshold, and we have a critical threshold. Now, of course, this is tabletop gaming, so we're using a D20 for pretty much every single roll except for damage. And the reason that we do this is because it gives a really good distribution and variance. Okay, there's a 5% chance of landing on any individual number. Give or take fractions, because no die is perfect. There's a 5% chance to roll a 1. Critical failure. And that means that whatever you did so bad that it's going to have some kind of knock-on effect. Okay, there will be an additional effect after this. Maybe the weapon jams, maybe you hit an ally, I don't know. On the other end of that, you have the natural 20, a critical hit. You have hit a weak point, or you have succeeded in a way that is beyond what your expectations were. And this is true across all of tabletop gaming. I see that Blizz is in here. Hello, Blizz. Good to see you. But since we use the D20 for basically everything, you can critically hit on an attack, you can critically succeed on a skill check or an ability check. Critical success is great. But that is not what JP was talking about. JP was talking about you should have additional damages for any damage internal. And that's where we get to the damage threshold and critical threshold. Now, damage threshold I'll cover first, because damage threshold I've talked about before and it's really easy. It is simply a damage reduction. And the way that I like to phrase this, and I thought it was kind of brilliant, is just imagine that every point of damage reduction, damage threshold, is 1 meter of armor. And you're thinking that's 15 meters of armor on this ship. And I'm like, yeah, it's a lot of metal. It's also not that unheard of. Because if you go back and you look at the battleships of old, when you look at the ships that we were using back during World War II, how much armor did they have around the beltline? They had yards of it. Your smallest ships might have had anywhere from like 12 to 24 inches of steel. And when you got into the big battleships, they weren't measuring in inches anymore. They were measuring in feet. And so a ship having a hull that is simply that thick is not unheard of. I mean, look at what we're throwing at each other here. We are throwing nuclear weapons at each other. 15 meters of armor? Okay, that's a good start. And remember, this is Babylon 5. We don't have shields. So, what about that critical threshold? Well, that critical threshold, once we get to that, the critical threshold is the amount of damage that if you exceed this, you inflict critical damage. And we can see critical damage right here. It's a D100 roll when it happens. And you can get critical damage to life support, sensors, weapons, engines, and power core. And, you know, since we're here, why not? I'll go ahead and show you that. It just so happens that I had it pulled up already, so it's convenient. Critical damage. When it is inflicted, it is going to affect one of the following systems. Life support. This condition will apply to all captain's actions. Now, what does that mean? Well, if we come down here and we look at what it does, the first level is glitching. A glitching system is not operating at peak performance. Any crew actions involving the system except for hold it together and patch engineer actions take a -2 penalty. Malfunctioning. If it's malfunctioning, it is difficult to control. Crew actions involving the system except for hold it together and patch take a -4 penalties. Also, crew members cannot take push actions. What is a push action? Well, in combat, the crew all have actions that they can take. Now, these actions are usually rather simple. They can do things like focus fire, they can do things like evasive maneuvers, things of that nature. However, once you get to the higher levels, you will gain access to push actions. These are more powerful, more influential abilities that require you to spend resolve points in order to make them happen. Most of them are available at level 6, I believe. So, a malfunctioning system cannot be pushed. If the power core is malfunctioning, all actions aboard the starship not involving the power core take a -2 penalty, which stacks with penalties from critical damage conditions affecting other systems. So, if you have a glitching weapon and you have a malfunctioning power core, that is a -2 to your weapon and a -4 or a -2 from the power core. If your weapon suddenly becomes malfunctioning, now it's a -6. Things can spiral quickly, so try to stay on top of them. And then wrecked. A wrecked system is minimally functional. Crew actions involved in that system, except for hold together and patch, and minor crew actions, automatically fail. Period. So, if the power core is wrecked, all crew actions aboard the starship not involving the power core take a -4 penalty, and this stacks, of course, with critical damage from all of the other systems. So now that we have a better understanding of exactly how the critical damage affects the ship, let's go back up here to this grid. Remember, any time that you exceed the critical threshold of a ship, you have done sufficient damage that you are not just doing hull damage, you are dealing, as JP pointed out, internal damage. So not only did you blow a big hole in the hull, but you also hit the sensors. And this condition applies to all science officer actions. That's going to be scanning, shields. Babylon 5 doesn't have shields, but regardless, anything of that nature. Scientists can actually help target weapons, I believe. Your weapons arrays, you roll randomly for one arc, and then you apply the condition to all weapons using that arc. Turrets count as being in all arcs. So, again, bad. Very bad. The engines, this applies to all pilot actions, which, I always thought was a little bit weird, but I guess they don't really want to slow them down too much. And then, of course, the power core, this applies to all engineer actions, as well as, affecting everything, because as we said, a malfunctioning power core is a -2 to everyone. A wrecked power core is a -4 to everyone. And so this is your internal damage. So if you were to get a bullet inside your ship somewhere and it goes ricocheting around the engine room somewhere, this is how we abstract that. So it's already built in. Which means that, yes, the Sea-Wiz might be a boring weapon. I disagree. I rather like the Sea-Wiz, but this is what it does. And like I said, if you're going to be rolling, 3d6 armor, or 3d6 damage, or whatever it happened to be. What was it actually? The heavy pulse cannon was 5d6, excuse me. then we're talking about not a single bullet dealing up to 30 damage. We're talking about a volley of 30 bullets and how many of them actually hit. And Alden's in. Hello, Alden. Good to see you here. Just to kind of drive the point home, if I come over here and I say that we have a single cannon shell, and it does 5d6 damage. I can have a cannon shell that comes out and does 21 points of damage. Or I could do this. A CWIS times 30. And then just roll 5d6. It's the same attack roll. And I can say that it's 30 rounds per shot. And it hits 15 times. So 15 points of damage. Same roll, different narrative. It's not a huge deal. It doesn't affect anything mechanically, but it does kind of recontextualize the weapons. And that's all we're looking for is context. Okay, getting back to the ship, though. So we've got our capital railguns, and again, it's a railgun, so we're looking at like this damage that says 2d6 times 10. It's a railgun that is going to be a single shell, which is just crazy. And I see that PC Unicorn is in. Hello, PC. Good to see you here, too. Now, particle beams. This could be a heavy particle beam. But down here, I need to check my notes. Thermonuclear missile. I'll get that in there. Actually, let me just go ahead and do that now. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Right there. So for a heavy particle beam, we have the heavy laser on the Omega, and the heavy laser was just that. It was the heavy laser cannon. No, that was the regular laser. Heavy laser, heavy laser, heavy laser... Particle beam? Did I misname these things? I think I did, actually. I'll fix it later. We'll just go back to this, and we'll do this by hand. So, capital weapons, no. Heavy weapons. I want a heavy particle beam. We've got a persistent particle beam, which, if it's a beam, persistent seems to be the best way to go. Very expensive, but you know what? I'm not paying for it, so sure, let's go for the gusto, right? So the heavy particle beam, let's make sure that we've got our terminology right. This is the Warlock class, and it has 2 heavy particle beam cannons. So, particle beam cannons, pulse cannons, railguns. We got the railguns done. Pulse cannons, pulse cannon, turrets, short range, phase plasma turrets. Actually, it doesn't say anything about beams. So maybe we don't do the persistent beam. Either way, though, it looks like they're just heavy particle beams. So we can do that. We'll skip the persistent particle beam and just go with the regular particle beam. Which is fine. And I don't think that there's really anything that I need to change here in terms of like the name, because we're calling it a particle beam either way. So particle beam. And we'll just grab the numbers for this. It's going to be long at 8d6. And they did call them cannons, so I'll go ahead and throw this in here. Just for the flavoring. So particle beam cannon, long 8d6. But there is, again, nothing special about the particle beam. It is 25 PCU and 20 build points. We'll just copy this in here. And we'll make sure to put a note down here that the particle beam cannon equals particle beam. There we go. Just so that we know exactly what it is. Also format this. There we go. Alright, and that leaves the heavy plasma cannon. Now, again, this should be pretty easy. Let's just see what we've got here in the heavy weapons. Heavy rotary cannon, for if you want your ship to have the Burt. Sol cannon, plasma cannon, right here. Perfect, that's exactly what we needed. And so, I don't actually need to change it because I believe that's exactly what it's called on the sheet. We have pulse cannons. Well, no, actually we don't. We have pulse cannons. All right, so just we'll call it pulse cannon. So pulse cannon. And Tux is here. Hello, Tux. We never get to see you in here. Tux says, somehow awake. Well, last I heard you were working night jobs, so yeah, that is a somehow awake. But still, I'm glad to have you in. And JP says, we want the Burt! Okay, well, if you want the Burt, all you gotta do is just, like, install it on your ship. Okay, you are one of the players. Just install it on your ship. I know for a fact that your resident bug will be happy. I know the Tholian desperately wants the Burt. Okay, so pulse cannon. Come back here and look at the plasma. Where was that? Plasma cannon, here we go. So it's medium range, 5d12. And again, there's nothing special about it. There's not a lot of secondary effects on these. It's literally just going to pound on whatever it's chasing until whatever it's chasing is dead. And, you know, with long-range railguns, long-range particle beams, medium-range pulse cannons, just, you know, in case it does catch up, and thermonuclear torpedoes with tracking, whatever they're chasing is not getting away. They classified this thing as a destroyer, and so far, it's living up to the name. So the plasma cannon is going to cost us 30 power and 20 build points. So we'll just fill those in, and just like that, I need to rename those actually, because they're just called railguns on the data sheet. But there we go. We're looking pretty good here. So railguns, particle beam cannons, pulse cannons, and missiles on all three facings. Again, as a destroyer, it doesn't have anything aft. This thing is not meant to be chased, it is meant to do the chasing. However, it is not completely defenseless because it still has the heavy point defense on the turrets. And it's on the turrets, that way it can have point defense in all directions at all times, wherever it needs it. It does not have a vulnerable point. If you manage to get in behind it, you have just found the less lethal point. I still wouldn't test it. So, the only point defense weapon that we have, of course, is going to be the heavy laser net. There it is. Heavy laser net. And what are they calling it on this ship? So it says that it has 16 short-range phase plasma turrets and any number of various small caliber energy and projective AA placements. It doesn't even know how many guns it has. And Tux asks, how is the game going? If you're asking about the B team, interestingly, they have completely forgotten about the plot. Okay, and that's either a good thing or a bad thing. It either means that I'm doing a phenomenal job building a living galaxy, or they just really are not interested in the plot at all. One of those things is definitely true. I'm just not sure exactly which one it is. But otherwise, it is going phenomenal. And should your circumstances change, there's always room for you to come back. Probably with a few medals. It's a long story. They'll tell you. So, anyway, I've got these short-range phase plasma turrets. That's probably what we're going to call them. We'll call it the PP turret. But unlike the pulse cannons on the Omega, these are all going to be heavy. So the heavy pulse cannons are up here. We'll just copy this, bring it down here, and I don't have the numbers for that at the moment. And Tuck says, it sounds about right. Oh no, I don't think you fully understand here. Your character has been busy since you left. Again, it's a long story, but your character is absolutely not out of the story. They're just a background character now, but that doesn't mean they're doing nothing. Alright, so coming back to this, heavy laser net is 15 and 15. Not 150, just 15. And I'll just go ahead and fill this in. Let me make sure to format this right. There we go. And I didn't fill this in. So, pulse cannon. So a pulse cannon equals plasma cannon. There we go. And that pretty much takes care of all the armaments. So again, I'm not putting any additional armor, and shields don't exist. Is it jump capable? Yes, of course it is jump capable. We know that much. So I think it's time that we go ahead and start totaling up. Oh wait, hold on, we need thrusters. Thrusters! Right now it doesn't have any way to go anywhere. So it is a dreadnought, which makes it colossal, which limits what we can do with them. It looks like that every colossal engine is going to give us a bonus except for the C8, which is actually good. C8 gives a +0, but that also means that it's right in line with every other ship. Everybody with an 8 can fly together in formation. Nobody is too fast or too slow. And the C8 is 416. Let's see. Tuck says, hopefully I now have hydraulic press arms. No, I have not altered your character in any way. And also, Darwin is the one who got the hydraulic press arms. That being said, we're all still pretty sure that Gradrock could fold him like origami. Okay, base frames, I didn't get the cost for this. The Dreadnought costs 200 build points. Yes, it is a big ship. And did I fill in this down here? Yes, I did. Okay, then. Then let me get out my calculator, and we'll start working on power. So, the engines alone, 400 PCU, which is just absolutely insane. The railgun, let me just total this up. So railgun and particle was 50, 80, 90. So since it's the same on all three facings, it's going to be 90 plus 90 plus 90. If we scroll down, the turrets are 15 each, so that's 60. And another 150 power for the bays. That comes out to 880. Now, here's the interesting thing. Here's something interesting that I want to try and abstract. It says here on the datasheet that it has 6 fusion reactors, 4 standard and 2 advanced. I have absolutely no idea what that means. But what I can do is that I can at least represent it. So, for example, the total power that we have right now is 880. All right, that's fine. Let me just go ahead and put this up here. 880. Of which the thrusters are 400, are half of that, which is just terrifying. But if the Warlock has 6 reactors, 4 are regular, 2 are advanced. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put down here power core housing times 5, because we're going to need that. Okay, technically speaking, you only get 1 power core for free. And power core housing costs us what? Power core housing costs 10 each. That's another 50. And Tuck says, super tired, going back to bed. That's fine. We were glad to have you here regardless. Or no, that's not Tuck, that's Alden. Excuse me. Alden's super tired, going back to bed. Which is also understandable. So, you take care. Hopefully I'll see you around again. And yeah, just take care. Okay, so power core housing is going to be 50 build points, but we're going to need that. So here's what I'm going to do. We have 880 PCU. If I wanted to divide that by 6, well, that would be inappropriate because that's not right. We have 4 regular fusion cores and 2 advanced. So let's divide that by 8. Now, 880 divides really nicely by 8. It's 110 each. So let's go look at our power cores and see what we've got. So 110. Do we have something for 110? In the colossal range. We do not. The only thing available for a colossal ship is the Gateway Ultra. Period. But what if I didn't do that? See, that makes more sense, having fewer power cores. What if I didn't do that? What if I ignored the rules for a minute? What if, and just, let me know what you think about this one. Down here, there is this Pulse Black. Okay, the Pulse Black for 120. I could give this thing 4 Pulse Blacks. Now, 4 Pulse Blacks would come out to be 480 power supply units and 48 build points, which is actually close to a Gateway Ultra anyway. We're not necessarily gaining anything from this. Okay, we're not cheating the system. The numbers still line up. We could do 4 Pulse Blacks. And then, for our advanced reactors, we'll double it to 240 or 250, whatever it takes. So if we scroll down, I don't see a 240, but there's a 250 at the Pulse Orange. So what if we gave it 4 Pulse Blacks and 2 Pulse Orange? Let's try it. So power core. We'll say Pulse Black times 4. Pulse Orange times 2. If we do this, and we look back at the Warlock class, 6 fusion reactors, 4 standard, 2 advanced. If we look back at our ship, it's exactly what we've got. So, now we just need to figure out exactly what does this get us. So, the 2 Pulse Blacks are going to be 480. And the 2 Pulse Oranges are 250, so that's going to be 480 plus 500 is 980. And that gives us enough to cover our power supply, plus a little bit extra. It's actually a kind of a ludicrous amount of power. Now, how much is it going to cost us, though? Each Pulse Black is 12, so that's going to be 48. Each Pulse Orange is 25, so that's 50. 50 plus 48 is 98. And you know what? That means that everything scales right in line. Because in general, that's how it works. 120 and 12, it's 10%. 140 and 14 is 10%. 250 and 25 is 10%. Even down here at the Gateway Ultra, 550, same thing. So it works out perfectly. It gives us everything that we want and need. Also, since we were talking earlier about critical damage, it also gives them an incredible amount of redundancy, which is fantastic. And Blizz has to go as well. Well, we're sorry to have you go. But thank you for coming anyway, and hopefully we'll see you next week. So you take care. Alright, now that we got our power straightened out, let's figure out the build points for this monster. Starting off, 200 for the frame itself. 16 for the thrusters. 98 for the power cores. Multiple. Now, for each arc, it's going to be 30, 20, 20, that's 70, plus 14 is going to be 84. So 84 takes care of our weapon arcs. It's going to be another 60 for the turrets. It's another 50 for the hangars and 50 for the power core housings. That's 100. The basic computer is free. The budget long sensors, however, let me check those. Budget long is going to be 6 build points. So there we go. So plus 6 equals 732 build points. $732 is in fact bigger than the Omega. That actually puts it on par with the Nova. A little bit bigger. So let's take a look at exactly what that means for us. 732 is going to put it square in the tier 17 range. That's not bad. And so that means that the base cost is going to be 732,000. And JP says, damn, 732. JP says that because their ships only just recently crossed over the 100 mark. But yes, and since we're looking at this, this is a tier 17 ship. Or tier 18. Tier 18? Yeah, tier 18 actually. Let me just fix that. So how does this compare to the Nova, and why is it that this ship is so much better than the Nova when they are both tier 18s? Well, for starters, this one has a much higher, or it's a larger frame, which is going to give it more hit points. Let's go ahead and update those actually, because it is going to get 4 HP bonuses. So we got to figure out exactly... Oh, not this one. Back over here. Not power cores, expansion base frames. Here we go. How much does it get per upgrade? For the Dreadnought, it's going to get 50, which means it's going to get an additional 200 points. Where's my mouse? Did my mouse really stop working? You know what? It's a spreadsheet. I don't need a mouse. Checkmate. But yes, my mouse did stop working. I gotta fix that. Find and fix problems with Bluetooth devices. I have to run this at least every other day. In the meantime, though, we'll go back to the Nova versus the Warlock. So, on its own, both of them are tier 18s, but the Nova only has 360 hull points, the Warlock 600. In addition, everything about the ship is just in general better except for its maneuverability. It still moves the same number of hexes every turn. It turns pretty much the same rate. I think maybe it turns one less or one more, I'm not sure. But we're talking about a 10-point damage reduction versus a 15-point damage reduction, a critical threshold of 48 versus a critical threshold of 80. There is, realistically speaking, no way to really do internal damage to this ship. The only thing that could possibly do it would be a high roll from a capital level weapon. And there, I got my mouse back. Good for me. As far as weapons go, the Nova does have a ton of cannons. I mean, it is nothing but cannons. At the same time, they're all basically the same cannons. It is really, really lethal at medium range. Anything that comes within medium range of this vessel, which is 10 hexes, is just absolutely screwed. However, the Warlock, most of its weapons are long range or tracking. And so its threat profile is much, much larger. In essence, are they both a Tier 18 ship? Yes. However, they are in completely different categories, just because of what the Warlock class is. Which is going to make it really interesting because now we're going to move into the next one. The last one for the humans. I got to make sure I do this one justice. Now, technically speaking, I'm going to fill this in. I'm going to say this is a human ship, although technically it belongs to the Alliance. That being said, though, the primary crew is human. It was built by Earth. I'm throwing it in here. This is going to be the Victory class. So let's go ahead and look at the Victory class. Because if we look at the Earth Alliance ships, it's not even on here. We need to go into the Interstellar Alliance. Now, the Interstellar Alliance has a few ships in it. However, a lot of these are also included in the other races. The only two truly Interstellar Alliance vessels are the White Star, which we'll get to. That'll be with the Minbari ships, because that was Minbari designed and Minbari constructed. It belongs to the Alliance, but it is a Minbari vessel. The Victory class is the same thing, but for Earth. Now, the Victory class looks a little bit weird because it is basically this one long, narrow hull with 3 wings coming off of it. You can't see the top wing because it'll cut off, but trust me, there's another wing up there. And now that I can find my mouse, yeah, there's another wing that goes like up that way. But let's take a look. So, the Victory class destroyer. Why did I reserve the Ultranaut for this one? Well, it's classified as a heavy destroyer. It's classified that because pretty much all the weapons point forwards. And what are those? Well, let's see. It does have 56 Star Fury fighter craft. Again, another indicator that this is very, very firmly an Earth ship. This cannot carry fighters from all of the other races. I mean, it could carry a few. It does have a hangar. But it is primarily meant to launch and utilize Star Furies. It has gravitic reactors and fusion reactors. What does that mean? I have no idea. And since it doesn't even tell us how many, I don't have to pull the same thing that I did with the Warlock. Now, weapons. This is where it gets interesting. The primary weapon of this thing is actually a Vorlon design. It is the 1 Super Quantum Discharge Cannon. These weapon pods on the end, or these pods on the end of each wing, you can't see the top one, but the pods on the end of each wing are multi-purpose. They are thrusters and they are also emitters. Why? Because all 3 of them will emit a beam of energy that will coalesce and converge at the front of the ship and then fire forward as one big beam. Now, do we have that? Yes, we do. Yes, we do. If we come back here into weapons, we have actually 4 categories of weapons. Vanilla Starfinder only had 3, but like I said, when we upgrade, or when they gave us the supplementary materials, they gave us the Super Colossal class. They also gave us spinal weapons. Now, spinal weapons can only be mounted on the forward arc. And these are basically just capital weapons turned up a notch. PC says, dumb question, but aren't build points needed for the interiors too? Well, yes, actually they are. But it really depends on what you mean by that. If you're talking about, like, the basic stuff that's needed on the inside for, like, crew quarters and life support and stuff like that, the answer is no. The fact is that you can't have a ship without having life support. You can't have a ship without having the crew quarters, and that includes, you know, like, food preparation, bathrooms, all things of that nature. You need to have a bridge, you need to have your gunnery, you need to have the engineering, you need to have all of this stuff. As such, it's all basically included in the build points for the frame itself, and this is why the frames kind of have a cost to begin with. It is a cost in just the mass of what you're plugging everything into, and all the includeds. Now, that being said, you can spend more on your internals. I'm gonna deviate here for just a moment because these are things that we almost never touch. But let's talk about crew quarters. So crew quarters. Most starships, larger than tiny, have places where their crew can eat, sleep, and bathe during long journeys through space. These quarters can range from hammocks strung between cargo containers to the cozy chambers with custom furnishings and private bathrooms. Crew quarters consume a negligible amount of PCU, although amenities in fancier quarters require operational power core to function. So let's take a look. Number 1, common. There is no cost to common. Common crew quarters are the most basic type. They consist of simple bunks, sometimes folding out of the side of a hallway, or other similarly austere places to rest. Crew members who sleep in common quarters usually keep their personal belongings in a footlocker. Common crew quarters also include a communal bathroom, which includes a military-style shower, a tiny gallery big enough to prepare only the most basic of meals. That's right, you're all eating sandwiches. And starships with crews numbering in the dozens or hundreds often have massive barracks where crew members sleep in ships. And if anybody's interested, I'm sure that JP in the chat probably has stories. But let's get into where we can actually spend our build points. Good quarters. These will actually cost you 2 build points. Now, this isn't 2 build points per. This is a global effect. So if you spend the money for good quarters, everybody gets good quarters, in theory. So good quarters are a bit more upscale than your common crew quarters. This is actually where you would usually see your officers. They consist of a dormitile story room that can hold 1 or 2 small beds. Larger starships usually require lower ranking crew members to share these quarters, and sometimes even a personal closet or drawer space for each occupant. Good crew quarters also include 1 or 2 shared bathrooms with multiple sinks and shower stalls and a dining space with an attached galley. Crews on larger starships eat in this dining space in shifts. Basically, if you were to look at a modern ship and the crew quarters on those, a not uncommon layout for officers is to have 2. Essentially, think of them almost like a very, very small studio apartment, mirroring each other, with a shared bathroom in the middle. And that's a really common layout if you're talking about junior and senior officers' quarters. Senior officers might get an upgrade. Junior officers, definitely that's the best they're going to get. And so we can move on to luxurious quarters. So these are going to cost you 5. Again, it's not 5 per quarter, it's a global adjustment, but luxurious. The luxurious crew quarters are the pinnacle of comfort. They consist of private rooms for each crew member with personal bathrooms, including showers with high water pressure, furnishings that match the residents' tastes. Some luxurious crew quarters even feature a kitchenette, gaming area, or intimate meeting spaces. You generally are not going to see that on any kind of vessel, unless you're talking about a suite on a cruise liner. You're not going to see it in any kind of military vessel. However, that being said, if we were to put this in context of like actual sci-fi settings that we see, Babylon 5 in particular, the quarters that we see for the senior staff on the Babylon 5 station as well as the ambassadors, would fall in the luxurious category. Because what we do see of them, and we only get peeks of them, it looks like the one thing that they all share in common is that the quarters for the senior staff and ambassadors are a single room that has their living space and a kitchen. Okay? And then it has a separated bedroom. And since they're usually done up in whatever the appropriate furnishing is for their culture, we can put them firmly in the luxury class. But again, you were talking about spending BP on the internals, and that's something that we can do. And yeah, I did notice that the chat was not updating, but JP's been going on a tear. It's called a head and a galley. Yes, I realize that. When you sleep in a berthing, officer quarters are called staterooms. I mean, this is all just naval terminology, but it's the same stuff. So, you don't have to pay for crew quarters, but you can. Now, what other internals can we get? So, there are other things that we can get. For example, we have armor, okay? And armor is pretty straightforward. You can either get armor, which is just a straight-up bonus to your armor class. You can also get ablative armor, which is temporary hit points. However, you can get what are called bulkheads. So, by dramatically strengthening the starship's bulkheads and other interior walls, the designer can reduce the odds of catastrophic system damage when a starship sustains damage. Whenever the starship would sustain critical damage, there is a % chance based on reinforced bulkhead fortification rating that critical damage is negated, although the attack still does damage to the actual starship. So, Mark 1 bulkheads are a 10% chance, Mark 2 is 20, Mark 3 is 30, all the way up to 50. Again, this is not required, but it is something that you could add to the internals. And that's just reinforcement. If we go to security, security is stuff that generally does not come into play unless your ship is being boarded or attacked by obscure methods. And so what do we have? Anti-hacking systems, anti-personnel weapons, just in case, you actually do get boarded. Biometric locks. Cloaking, something that we're not using in Star Trek, but we will absolutely be using in Babylon 5. We have computer countermeasures. In case somebody wants to hack your computer, we have self-destruct systems. These are all things that can be added into the interior. Again, not required, but you can. And these aren't really going to go anywhere on the sheet except to put them on there under, just additional systems, put them in the notes that your ship has these things. And so, yeah, there are things that you can spend for your interiors. It all depends on how much investment you want to put into your ship. All right, so with that being done, one thing that I forgot to update over here is going to be up to 80,000. Stop moving, please. There we go. All right, getting back to the victory class. So, crew. Roughly 150 to 600. I'm going to go ahead and just put 600 on the high end. But the 150, that's your skeleton crew, I suppose. Actually, no, I can put that in here. 150 to 600. And passengers, can be up to 2,000. Now, size. Super colossal. And for super colossal, we'll go back to our base frames and scroll all the way down to the bottom because there is only one option. Well, technically there's two, but the other one is a base ship, and this is not a base ship. The Ultranaut. Maneuverability. What maneuverability? The pilot frame bonus is a -2. Turn rate is 4. But don't worry, it's not going to matter that much, I don't think. Thruster speed. We'll get to that later on. So, armor class, by default, is going to be 8. Same with the target lock. The damage threshold. Text says, the existence of the victory class implies the existence of a failure class. Yes, that would be the other victory class that didn't make it through the battle. Was that joke in poor taste? Probably. Don't care. Okay, damage threshold is going to be 20. The critical threshold is 110. You're probably never going to ever crit this thing. It's not going to happen. If you do, it'll have to be on a natural 20, and the ship is probably going to say, oh, well, that's inconvenient. Somebody fix that. Hit points. 550 to start. Oh, and before I forget, the Ultranaut costs 350 build points. Alright, so that's the hit points. Coming down, we're going to fill pretty much all of these, I think. Expansion bays. I don't know how to do the infinite symbol, so I'm just going to put number there because it does not have an upper limit for them. All I can say is that this thing has Star Furies. 56 Star Fury craft. That's actually kind of a weird number. Because Star Fury wings are usually a dozen. However, since my hangar bays hold 8 tiny craft, 56 divided by that is going to be 7, and I'll take the win where I can get it. So I'm just going to go ahead and say for expansion bays right now, hangar bay, or hangars times 7. Each one is 30 PCU, so that's going to be 210. Each one is 10, so it's going to be 70. Boom. Done. The sensors and computers will not change, so I can fill that in right now. Jump capable. Yes, it is jump capable. Power core we'll figure out later. As far as the armor goes, yeah, we'll do it this way. Technically, there are special things about this ship that we may need to account for. We'll get to that in a moment. So let's just start working on the rest of it. Thruster speed. Well, as a super colossal ship, our thruster options are going to be limited. So thrusters for a super colossal down here. This is the first time where we're going to see a ship that is actually slower. The super colossal 6 thrusters are the ones that have no bonus. So, this ship is actually going to be slower. However, it's not actually going to use any more power than the Warlock engines. It's just basically the same engine. It just has more mass to move. So we got that. Armor doesn't matter. We're not doing that. So let's take a look at the weapons, and we'll do a quick sketch first before we look into how we're going to do this. So the Victory-class destroyer, number 1, it has its Super Quantum Discharge Cannon. Well, that's a lot of fancy words. However, what we need to put up here is going to be a spinal beam. Now, what about the rest? 8 heavy quantum discharge cannons. Now, those are actually going to be forward lasers located inside of this bow section. There are more cannons in there. So those are going to be facing forward and backwards, because it does have some rear weapons. 6 heavy neutron cannons. Okay. 12 fusion beam cannons. Multiple anti-fighter pulse cannons along the hull, and missiles in multiple launchers. Okay. So looking at these, we've got our 1 spinal weapon. Okay, that's fine. Next, we have the quantum discharge cannons, the neutron cannons, beam cannons, and the anti-air as well as missiles. Well, let's break this down a little bit. So we know that we have 1 slot dedicated to this on the forward mount. So that leaves us roughly 3 slots left. What else needs to go forward? Presumably... it's actually kind of hard to determine what it's going to be. I do believe that we're not going to be able to do what we did with the Warlock and simply mirror everything. That was convenient. That was really nice, but I don't think we're going to be able to. So let's just make like a quick list here. We need to have the spinal beam. Okay. We need to have the heavy cannons. We need to have... there's 6 more heavy neutron cannons, but I have no idea what the difference between a quantum discharge and a neutron cannon is, so they're just heavy cannons. Fusion beams. And then we're going to have AA turrets. And then missiles. Well, the AA turrets are going to go on the turrets, so we can count those out, which means that if we're going to put this on the ship, we need to have the spinal beam, but that can only go forward, and then heavy cannons, fusion beams, and missiles. Okay. Well, I think what we'll do for this ship is we're actually go a little bit light on the weapons. After all, I mean, this ship is technically a destroyer, but it's been repurposed as more of a long-range research ship now, so it's fine. We'll just go a little bit light. We'll do heavy cannon on the front, fusion beam, and missile. And then we'll just simply copy these. Down to here. Now, aft. Yeah, we can do the same thing. We can do that. And then for the turrets, we'll just have the anti-air turrets. I think that's the best we can do. So, since we're there, let's start trying to put this stuff together, and we'll start with the spinal mount. So weapons, we'll go all the way down to the bottom and see what we've got. What we're looking for is going to be just a big beam. Now, this calls it a quantum discharge cannon. I don't really have anything that even represents that. So what can I do? Here's the thing, like most of these are line weapons. They're going to hit everything in front of them. It's not going to be necessarily an orbital weapon, although I suppose it could be. The thing about orbital weapons, though, is that if it has the orbital qualifier, that means it's not suited for use against other ships. Or at least not most ships. So it says an orbital weapon is a cumbersome yet powerful, designed to devastate immense targets or bombard planetary surfaces. During starship combat, attacks using an orbital weapon take a -4 penalty to the gunnery check if the target is medium or smaller, and a -2 penalty if it is a large, huge, or gargantuan vessel. Notice that it did not say colossal. Technically speaking, you can bring this weapon to bear against another colossal ship. But that also makes it wholly unsuited to anything else. That being said, I could make the argument. A gunner can also fire the orbital weapon at a large, stationary target such as a settlement or battlefield. The effects follow the guidelines below. These guidelines are somewhat flexible so as to limit the degree to which PC starships might obliterate a key site or to allow NPC starships to deal the necessary structural damage without outright annihilating the PCs. I mean, keep in mind that anything you can do to my NPCs, they can do to you. Orbital attacks have an immense range. Orbital weapons with a short range can strike large targets from low orbit, approximately 1,000 miles. Medium range are effective from high orbit, approximately 20,000 miles, and long-range orbital weapons can strike from extraordinary ranges, 100,000 miles or more. How far away is the moon, by the way? Let's see. Google, how far away is the moon? The moon is 238,900 miles, give or take. Meaning that a long-range orbital weapon can fire from half the range of the moon. Now, when it strikes an area, it damages everything in a 100-foot radius for a light weapon, 500-foot radius for a heavy weapon, 2,500-foot radius for a capital weapon, or a mile radius or larger, depending on the GM, for a spinal mount weapon. Orbital weapons rarely fire faster than once every 10 minutes during bombardments, and a spinal mount weapon can rarely fire more than once per hour. Now, interestingly, we actually do have numbers for this, because it was a major plot point in the Babylon 5 movie A Call to Arms. These ships run on Vorlon technology. Unfortunately, they do not have Vorlon power cells. So, the only way to actually fire the weapon is to brown out the entire ship. The only thing that they have power left for is life support and gravity. And it takes 1 minute, 1 full minute in combat for the ship to recover. And then if you fire it again, you're just browning out the ship. So, having a rule in here that they rarely fire more than once every 10 minutes for bombardments, or, spinal being once every hour, makes sense, although we're going to fudge that. So, orbital weapons deal 10 times 18, or times their listed damage to inanimate objects in the affected area, damaging or outright destroying many structures. Against vehicles, living creatures, and other smaller targets in the affected area, the orbital weapon's damage effects and other statistics are best approximated using the trap creation guidelines for a trap, with a CR equal to the value listed with the weapon's orbital special property. For the spinal, that's 18. Orbital weapons require additional features to function properly on most ships. Any starship modified by the colony ship framework or space station framework is sufficiently fortified to mount orbital weapons without needing extra features, reducing the orbital weapons build point cost by 1/3. I do think that I want to go ahead and make it an orbital weapon. Just because it makes it that little bit extra awkward for the ship to use it. And that is one of the key features that we saw in the actual show, is that the orbital weapon was incredibly dangerous. Also incredibly hard to use, to the point where it was a commitment, and you better make sure that you're actually going to hit whatever you're aiming at. So I think that's what we'll do. Also, the times that we did see it fire, which weren't often, but the times that we did, one of the things that I will note is, for example, when they targeted an asteroid for a test, they destroyed the asteroid and then it didn't really go through it. Now, that might be because they simply turned it off after the asteroid was destroyed. Who can say? So I like the orbital idea. But you know what? I can give it the line property if I want to. Why not? So we'll do that. So let me just make sure that my format is properly painted here. And we'll get back to the Victory class. So, super quantum discharge cannon. We'll put it up here first. Super quantum discharge cannon. And the award for the longest name goes to... Super Quantum Discharge Cannon. We'll come back to Starship Weapons here, and we'll copy this information. So, the Orbital Devastator. And then we'll get everything put in here. So, the Orbital Devastator does not have a speed, obviously. However, it does have a damage. It's going to be it's going to be long, I should say. Long. And 8d6 times 10. Now, what does that mean? It means simply this. When we come here, we roll the dice for it. We will just say Orbital Devastator, and it's going to be 8d6 times 10. We throw the dice, 320 points of damage. Somebody's day is being ruined. To put this in context, 320 points of damage. What does that mean to our other ships? Let's scroll up here and take a look. 320 points of damage. That is more than half of the Warlock class's hit points. And by the way, every time you exceed the critical threshold, even if you do it multiple times, that can be multiple crits. So 320 means that we can take the 15 off for the Warlock. All right, that's still 305. That is still going to be 305 hit points of damage. And since their threshold is 80, 3 critical damage. So you roll 3 d100s and apply it to the critical damage. What does that mean for the Omega class? Well, we get to take 10 off, so it's only 310 damage. But we have reduced the we have reduced the carrier from 360 to 50. As well as inflicted about 5 critical damages. And it just gets worse the further down we go, to the point where if there were actual fighters in the way, I don't think you couldn't even really target them with it, but like if you rolled a natural 20, it would wipe out an entire squadron of Star Furies. Easily. And JP says, LOL, the Phoenix would not survive that. No, it would not. Not only would the Phoenix not survive that, hold on, let's see. The Phoenix has, if I recall correctly, 85 hit points. A ship reduced to negative its max hit points is not disabled, it is completely destroyed. Meaning that if the Phoenix were to be hit by that, the ship would simply be vaporized. That is power. And that is what a spinal weapon on a ship like this should feel like. So, I'm going to give it the line property as well as it was orbital 18? Yes. Orbital 18. And how much is it going to cost us? It's going to cost us 60 power and 54 build points. And again, just to put that in context, 60 power and 54 build points. A single Star Fury, the Aurora class, is 35 build points. The Thunderbolt is 43. This is a weapon that is larger than a Star Fury. Alright, let's get into the heavy cannons then. I'm going to go ahead and... how do we want to do this? I think I'm going to go ahead and make the heavy cannons capital. And I think I'm going to do that because if I look at the missiles, I don't see the missiles necessarily getting any bigger. There is technically here a nuclear mega missile launcher, which first sounds funny. I mean, it sounds a little bit weird. But I mean, missiles are missiles. I cannot see them suddenly making a different, like, larger missile to put on this thing. So I'm tempted to leave the nuclear missiles on this thing as the same as they always have been. If we look at heavy cannons, let's see, song cannon, I want to look for something, let's see, that's the mass driver, that's not what we're looking for. Particle beam cannons and persistent particle beam cannons. The persistent particle beam is something that I wanted to use earlier and we didn't. I could use it now. The fusion beams we could use as the persistent particle beams. I kind of like that. So let's look at some of the other things. There is a super plasma cannon. Now, interestingly, when I think about this, I don't really want to load it up with too many different weapons. Or, interestingly, how about this? What if we do this? Okay, what if we do this? Since we have 4 slots, and since we already have our first spinal weapon, what if we do 1 spinal, 1 capital, 1 heavy, 1 light? Okay, we'll do it that way. We will do it that way. So, in that case, we just have to determine what is going to be our capital weapon. Is it going to be the fusion beam or the heavy cannon? And I think it's going to be the fusion beam. Okay? So, capital weapon, fusion beam. We already know what we're going to do with this one. This one is going to be the persistent particle beam cannon. Now, let me get my title first because... No, they literally just call it a fusion beam. Okay. Then we'll come down here. And I wrote these in the wrong place. Now I gotta fix it. There we go. Okay. Fusion beam equals... persistent particle beam. Did I really spell that wrong? Yes, I did. Shame on me. Alright, now that we know that's a persistent particle beam, let's go ahead and fill in the rest. So the persistent particle beam is long, and it does 2d10 times 10. There is otherwise nothing special about it. But let's get this in, 50 and 40. Now, heavy cannons. So when it says heavy cannons, we're going to go up to heavy weapons. And I think that we're looking at plasma weapons here primarily, although I'm not sure. Because it says here that we have two different versions. We have the quantum discharge cannons, and we have neutron cannons. I have no idea what either of those mean. As I said before, quantum in Starfinder is a weapon quality that allows you to re-roll your attacks. And neutron is just a name. If I were to search for it... Well, how do I spell the damn thing? Neutron. N-E-U. I tried that. N-E-U. Alright, fine. I guess we don't have anything to compare it to. Never mind. We're just going to pick a cannon. What kind of cannon do we want? We have a laser cannon. We have the heavy orbital particle cannon, but we're not doing another orbital weapon. That'd just be no. Solar cannon, song cannon, particle beam, persistent particle beam. Oh, we have a persistent particle beam in heavy too. I should update that to make sure that it doesn't get confused. So this is a capital. Captail? I can't spell today. I can't believe the autocorrect didn't catch that either. Capital? No. There we go. Capital. Okay. And JP says nuke cannon. We're gonna get nukes, okay? We're gonna get nukes. I promise. Plasma cannons. We've been using them before. I see no reason not to use them again. And PC says search under Jimmy. That's cute. That's cute. I know there's no Jimmys in there, though. Okay, I'm not even going to change this. I'm just going to put or use this as plasma cannons. That's all I'm going to do. Plasma cannon. Because I got two different names. I don't know which one necessarily to use. And so I'm just going to go with the name. Medium 5d12. I guess I could pick one and try to make it look all scary, but sure, I guess. If I had to pick one of them, it has 8 heavy quantum discharge cannons and 6 heavy neutron cannons. I guess I'll go with the quantum discharge cannons. So, quantum discharge cannons. And let me just grab the numbers for this. It's going to be 30 and 20. Much as I've used it, I mean, should probably know. And then the missiles. I don't necessarily see why this thing would have light weapons on it, but I had a theme going and I'm going to stick to my theme. So we'll come to the light, and we'll grab the... Where is it? The Tactical Nuclear Missile Launcher. And I'm not going to change the name on that one because they literally just said it has missiles. Alright, fine. Have it your way. Have it your way. Alright? We have now turned this thing into a Burger King. And PC says, can't be quantum anymore. You made the choice and collapsed the waveform. Yes, I realize that. And JP says, it needs light weapons for illumination. You people are terrible, okay? You people are just awful. Why do I tolerate you? So, tracking 10, it does 5d8 damage. And it has low radiation. And only 5 rounds in it. And I actually feel good about this because, like, that is one of the strongest weapons you're going to get when it comes to light weapons. 10 and 18. And Jeffrey just smirking in there. He's a smirker. Actually, when it comes to the damage, let me go ahead and just sort this. Let's see what is like the actual strongest weapon in the light category. If we ignore the specials, we ignore these. Light frag mines do 8d4. That's a max of 40. The chain cannon does 64. That's 24. The nuclear mines and nuclear launcher both do 5d8. That's 40. So, yeah, it's a toss-up between... No, not even really a toss-up. 8d4 is 32 damage. Yeah, nukes are the strongest light weapon. Period. End of story. So, it's kind of fitting. So, we'll just copy these down here. There we go. And JP says, nukes provide a lot of light, momentarily. Yeah, it is very brief, but it's also very bright. You know what they say? Live fast, die young. Well, nukes are very fast. Okay, so we got those done. Now we need our turrets. And I'm running out of time here, so we really got to pick this up. I'm just going to go ahead and take the same turrets from the Warlock class, because it's really nothing that I have available. There's not a ton of point defense weapons. So that will take care of our turrets. And is this good enough? Is this what we like? I gotta say, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. Why don't I like it? The reason I don't like it is because I don't actually like having the fusion beams on the sides. I really don't. So I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take one of the beams off of here and I'm going to put it here, okay? Then I'm going to delete the beams on the port and starboard. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double up on the cannons. Now, what am I doing here? What am I doing here is I want it so that the beams are firing forward and backward, because those are the narrowest arcs. And beams only really go in straight lines. That's all they can do. They don't have a whole lot of variation unless you put them on a turret. And since turrets are very specific and these are fixed weapons, I can't see the beams swinging a lot from side to side. Cannons, however, traditionally are mounted on turrets. As such, yeah, give them the wider arc at port and starboard. So I will take the cannons off of the forward and aft. I will put another fusion beam forward. And so now we have a very different profile for this ship. Forward, it has dual fusion beams, and again, it has, like more of them, but we're abstracting here, as well as the super quantum discharge cannon. Great, as well as missiles. This thing can dump missiles on all sides. It can dump 4 missiles per turn. Port and starboard, we have the quantum discharge cannons. These are going to be kind of a screen. If you get in too close, they're going to tear you apart. It's fine. Aft, we have 2 more beams, as well as another nuclear launcher. If you want to come in from behind, you take your life into your hands. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and just throw another fusion beam in there to fill it out. For that matter, I may as well just go ahead and fill in everything else too. There we go. So we have fusion beams forward and aft, we have cannons on the sides, and we have turrets for anti-air. Everything is filled in. So, with that being done, and as I'm running out of time, let's go ahead and start trying to figure out what is it going to take to power this thing, what tier is it going to be. If this thing cannot possibly be less than a tier 18. It just can't be. So, PCU. The thrusters are 400 on their own. Scrolling down. The forward arc is 60 plus 250s is 160 plus the missile is 10, so 170. Port and starboard. The 3 cannons are 90 plus the missile is 100, so 200. Aft. 3 fusion beams is 150 plus the nuclear missile is 160. The turrets are another 60. There is no power requirement for the computer or the sensors, so that just leaves us the hangar at 210. And if I total that up, that is 1,200 PCU on the nose. So, how are we going to get 1,200 PCU? Let's look at our power cores. So the only things that we can mount are these Titans. There is a Titan Light for 700, a Titan Heavy for 950, and a Titan Ultra for 1,200 PCU. Do you remember what I said about every time they fired the main cannon, they would brown out the entire ship? Only life support and gravity would remain. I think that's perfect. A Titan Ultra, 1,200 power, and absolutely no wiggle room. Sometimes things just work out. That is going to be 70 build points. There we go. And now that we have that, let's find out how many build points it is and what tier is it. So 350 for the frame, 20 for the thrusters, 70 for the power core. Now forward, 54, 40, 40, and 18. Port and starboard are going to be 60 plus 18 is 78. Aft, 40 times 3 is 120. 120 plus 18 is going to be 138. And then the turrets are another 60. We need 6 for the sensors and 70 for the hangars, which brings it total to 1,022 build points. What tier could this possibly be other than 20? And that's exactly what it is. The Victory class is a tier 20 vessel, which is appropriate for the largest ship made by any of the younger races. And since it's 1,000 credits per build point, that will come out to 1,022,000 credits. And I gotta be honest with you, I feel good about that one. I feel really good about that one. I like it. It deserves to have somebody like, or it deserves to have this profile. I feel like it's being respected. It is dangerous at long ranges, it is dangerous at medium ranges and close ranges, and it's even dangerous if you're outside of all other firing ranges, because that central cannon, that quantum discharge cannon, I mean, if you're on a station or something, you have no chance. And JP says, create a new Kraken class for it. I don't even know what that means. Besides, I'm not making any more classes. We're just going to make the classes that we do have already. Okay, but I am out of time, so that kind of worked out perfectly. So, with the Victory done, we are done with the Earth Force ships. So, next time, I think we'll go ahead and we will tackle probably the Minbari. They're pretty much the next most important race. And if we look at the Minbari Federation, They have several classes, although I'm not sure what we're going to be doing. And 2 of them are transports. So there is the Charlin class, which is what we see the most of. It's the angelfish looking ship that you can't see the top half because it's cut off. And JP just says, I just want to be able to say, release the Kraken. But if you're on the Kraken, then there you go. See, what you need to do, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to get like a launch tube on your ship so that you can have a fighter pilot. Right? And then you name the fighter the Kraken. And then you can say, release the Kraken. That's how you do it. But anyway, there's the Charlin class war cruiser for the Minbari. Then there's the Tenashi. Now the Tenashi class war frigate is a little bit weird because we only ever see the Tenashi class war frigate once. Just once. In a flashback, during a time travel episode, and that's it. This is an old ship. This ship is over 1,000 years old. So do we even want to bother? The answer is probably not, to be honest. The only reason to bother with this ship at all is if we were going to play through the first, or at least the previous Shadow Conflict. I can't say the first because we don't know how many more there were before it. So realistically, the Minbari will probably be done in 2 ships. Because after that, they just have a single fighter. It's the only fighter they have. It's really the only ships that we ever see them use. And then maybe the White Star, because that was also Minbari. And Tux says make a Crackalakin class ship. I mean, technically I can. I can make anything I want. But that's going to be it for now. I'm going to go ahead and close this stuff out. So we did good today. I'm very happy with both the Warlock and with the Victory class. I can't wait to actually see those in action. They're probably never going to be piloted by players, which means that they will be essentially set pieces. My players would operate on them instead of actually controlling them. But still, I look forward to it. And so, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. So if you're enjoying this and you want to see more of it, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon. That way you get notified every time these videos come out. If you know somebody else who's also into Babylon 5 or Starfinder, then share this with them, absolutely. Especially if they're into the ships, because they'll love the last 5. Otherwise, if you just want to leave a like on the video, you're having fun, go ahead and leave a like on this video. Okay, do that. Leave a comment down below if you want. But if you're going to go ahead and do that, might I suggest you go ahead and just join the Discord. We have one. There's people on it. We're getting new people almost every day. Okay, not almost every day, more like every week. But if you want to come play with us, join the Discord. Come to the Behind the Screens channel. Let me know what game that you want to play and what your availability is. And as soon as I can put a group together, we'll play. So, I hope to see you there. I hope to see you here next time. And until then, take care.